Hi, this is Real Estate from an Attorney's Perspective. I'm Bill Mason from Mason and Mason, and I'm happy to have my good friend Andrew Markowitz with us today. He's a real estate broker in New York. I do a lot of business with him, and I thought he'd be a perfect person to discuss things you should consider before you list your property. I've done countless deals with Andrew over the years. I think he's a guy that really can help you when you list your property, and he's got a great knowledge of the real estate market in New York. He's an amazing negotiator, and I'm going to go off topic a little here because I just now thought of a story I think I want to bring up in a way that he helped me with a client about a year ago. I had an elderly couple that was selling their home in Brooklyn to move out to Long Island to be closer to family. They had found a buyer of their property without using a realtor, and we were trying to get the property into contract, and it just wasn't going anyplace. We were dealing with a builder that was buying and making a lot of demands and kind of just really giving us a hard time. And it had gotten to the point where it just didn't seem like the deal would work. And I had referred Andrew to go out there and give a valuation of the property because one of my other concerns was if he was selling it for the right price. And so Andrew, when I spoke to him on the phone, he said, "All right, well, before we list the property, let me go do the valuation. And since we do have this buyer, let me talk to him and see what I can work out." I don't remember the exact numbers, but including Andrew getting his commission, which he was entitled to, the client probably realized 50 or 75,000 more out of the deal. The deal went through. Remember at the closing, the people brought him pastry. They loved him. I think they were trying to get him in the family. But it shows, like, how important it is to have a good market knowledge. Andrew immediately was able to determine the property was worth more and show this to this developer, who's obviously a sophisticated buyer, and get him to pay more for the property and bring the deal to fruition. Now that I got sidetracked here, with that said, this is Andrew Markowitz, and hopefully he could tell us a little about himself before we start to talk about the things he considers or would like his people to consider before they sell their property. Thanks for
Definitely.
being here.
Thanks for letting me be here, part of your podcast. And, it's always good to see you because it
Thank you.
means that we did something right and we're going to close on something. But
Yep.
also, it's always good to see you just
Thank you.
because I like you. I'm Andrew Markowitz. I own a brokerage. I'm a real estate broker. I've been in the business for over 10 years. I've hit real estate from many different angles. So I was a mortgage person at one point. I worked for a developer. I worked in a law firm that did real estate. I own real estate. I've sold real estate. I manage real estate. So I have perspectives from different angles, and that's how I use it to help my clients.
So, Andrew, for the first question, I guess what I wanted to talk about is how important is it to properly price the house so that you don't sit on the market, forever or, undersell the property? Like, what do you think about what's going through your head? What are you telling a client when they're asking you these questions about what should I price the house?
So there's a couple of things that we look at. We look at the market in general. Is it a seller's market? Is it a buyer's market? Is it a neutral market? And then we take into consideration comps, what has sold, what's in contract, what's on the market. Then we take all of those and then we examine them a little bit further. So we see how long did those things take to sell? How long did those things take to get into contract? How long have those properties that are going to be your competition been on the market? Have they had any price cuts? All of these we take into consideration because we don't want to misprice it and then all of a sudden we become that stale property that's been on the market. You could have a fantastic property that has all the bells and whistles, triple mint, but if you priced it the wrong way and then you're sitting on that market, everyone's going to think that you have something wrong with it. So,
Right. The longer you're on the market, the more people start thinking, well, why is it sitting there? Why isn't it sold? Right.
exactly. So that's why it's very important to get that pricing correctly. In fact, one pricing strategy that, a lot of people are scared of is underpricing it a little bit and creating that bidding war mentality. So just for round numbers, let's say you could get $1 million for a property. You price it at 950 instead of that 1,100,000 because a lot of people are like, oh, I need that negotiation room. People
Right.
are going to lowball me.
Right.
But if you do it at that 950, everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, that's a steal. Oh, I need to have it." And then all of a sudden, they're bidding, and then our competitive nature as human beings comes into play. "Oh, somebody bid it? Oh, no, they're not gonna get that property. I'm gonna get it." No, and then all of a sudden, you're getting 1,050,000 or 1,020,000, whatever it is, million over that initial price that you thought you were gonna get
Yep.
just because of that competitive nature. So sometimes it's a lot better to do that than it is to do overpricing.
Yep, I've had that happen to me as the attorney where I've got a contract out and then you get a call, up 100,000 more with somebody else, or
Yeah.
yep, or you don't even get the contract out, especially in this market. The market's crazy right now,
Yeah, yeah,
even with the high interest rates, at
yeah.
least in Long Island. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's different. Yeah, it's different in
In
every
different
firm. Yeah,
market, I
yeah,
guess, right?
yeah.
So I guess, aside from the price, whether it's commercial or residential real estate, there's a personal aspect to it, right? As far as when the people's going to sell, as far as their timing and any kind of thing that's going on with them. What are the things like you want to go over with the seller and I guess make them think through for themselves before you let them list?
Well, I guess we need to figure out what's your next step in life. Are you upsizing? Are you downsizing? Are you moving for work? Are you moving to because of life changes? You need to be next to family. These are all important because you need to know, are you selling and buying something? And if so, what are you netting to help you buy that next property? Are you gonna use do you need the money from this sale to get to the next one? So there's a lot of things that come into play also on timing. So if you need to move right now, of course that lower strategy is better than if you have a lot of time. Then you could test the waters if you want to do the other way, a little bit higher and then cut
Yeah.
if needed. So that's definitely one of those things that, you need to know what's going on with a person's life.
Yeah, those are all important considerations. You know, typically when I have someone come in and sign a contract, one of the first questions I ask them if they're a seller, okay, what are you doing from here?
Yeah.
And I'm sometimes surprised at how many people haven't really thought that through. And I'm like, well, you agreed to like a very quick closing here, where you're going to move, or, or if it's a commercial property, you need to find a replacement property for 1031. Sometimes the selling part, especially in this market, is easier than the buy part, right?
Oh, yeah, of course,
Sometimes it's
especially on a
really hard. Yeah.
1031, right?
Yeah. So, and another good point is people sometimes don't realize how much the closing costs are, especially in New York. And if you don't do that calculation of how much is coming out of the cost, or they don't realize how much their mortgage payoff is, these are important things so that people can get out of one property and move to the other property. So
Yeah.
that those are really, important things. I guess another thing that would be a conversation is, what do you tell the people to do to prepare their property? Is there like anything special they should do, or what's the conversation you have in that regard?
Well, it depends on the property. Sometimes we have people that they need to sell, and they don't have money to do anything to the property. In those cases, we say, "Hey, we're doing it as is, but let's try to declutter as much as possible." Put our best foot forward, at least in that aspect. Yes, it's a fixer-upper, or maybe it's in good shape, but good old shape. If we declutter, that helps a lot. If you have some money, it's always good to do a little bit work. If there's a leaky faucet, if
Painting,
you need to
right?
paint, right? I mean, even if you do nothing but just paint, a fresh coat of paint makes the property look a lot,
Sure, cleaner and
cleaner.
yeah, and brighter.
Yeah, yeah,
Sure.
yeah, yeah. And so there's little things that you could do to help in that aspect. And then if a property is vacant, then we could think about maybe we do some staging, get some furniture in it. I'll always do virtual staging for my clients.
How's that work?
So basically, we get the professional photographer in there, and they take the pictures, so we have nice clean pictures. Then I have another staging company that does virtual staging, puts in furniture. We decide, is it more of modern looking? Is it more traditional? And then they add in the furniture, and
Oh, wow.
it gives people the idea of how it could
Like
look,
me, that we
right?
don't have a vision.
Right, exactly. So a lot of times people see an empty place, and I've come across a lot of people that are like, can I even fit my bed in here? Meanwhile, it's a nice sized property, but or a nice sized bedroom, but you can't visualize what it's going to look like. And in those cases, also, when I worked for a developer, there were times that we couldn't sell a property because people were thinking the same thing. Can my bed fit here? Can I put a large dining room table here? They can't visualize themselves, but when we got the furniture in there,
Really?
they sold like that. So,
Wow.
but then again, there's a cost to that. So you have to make sure that what you're netting from that property justifies you renting that furniture because you're renting the furniture basically.
Mhm.
And if you're not netting enough money, then obviously it's not
Not
going to
worth
make
it.
sense.
But I imagine just the virtual staging, which is probably something I imagine you do, right?
Yeah,
When everyone's looking for properties on Zillow and all the website, types of things that they see it and they could see what it looks like as opposed to just a bunch of empty rooms, right?
exactly.
That's great. So if it was like, does it make sense to do renovations before you're going to sell, or is that like not a good idea? Like, if your bathroom's old or just clean it up, it doesn't pay to like renovate it. Like, what's your thought on that?
I think it depends on the market conditions,
Mhm.
basically. In a fast-moving market, you don't have to do anything.
Right.
Not even declutter, right? Like a couple of years ago when we had that crazy market, things were just moving.
Right.
So, in a slower environment,
Do you get your money back, do you feel?
you do with certain
Certain
things.
things.
Not some things you do not, some things you do.
Right.
But a new kitchen always adds value.
Right. That's a key, right?
Yeah, new kitchen,
Expensive,
new
but key.
bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are also ways to do it more economically, but not spend that. Not it looks great, but you're not going all the way. You're not doing the handles that are costing $50 each, and you're not doing the cabinets that are super expensive.
Right. Hmm.
There's ways around it, but
So you get your money back.
you do get your money back. You definitely do get your money back. But there's also the opposite. You could over renovate, right?
Right. And not realize it. Yeah,
And
or
not
renovate
realize
with something that somebody doesn't like,
right,
you know?
right. And then that's another thing that people have to take into consideration is that you're not renovating for you. You're renovating for the next person. So people are like, "Oh, I want this bright red black splash that's really specific to taste."
I'll tell you a funny story. So after Sandy, my mom lived in Massapequa on the beach. And
Yeah.
she had a beautiful house, and there was like the storm surge, and the whole back of the house was glass, and it actually took out all the windows, and the whole
Ooh.
house flooded, right?
Uh,
And she had a sub-zero refrigerator. I remember it being down on the beach, like saying, "Wow, this thing floats." It like got all the way down here, and we renovated the whole house, and it looked beautiful, right?
right.
And so my mom then decided to move, and the people that bought the house, right? They came in and they gave us pretty much full asking price for the house, but they came in and they gutted the whole house.
Oh,
So it was just like funny, like, it was all brand new, but it just didn't work for them,
right.
and part of it was also they wanted to relocate the kitchen and in a different part of the house, but they completely gutted the houses. So sometimes doesn't matter whether you renovate or not, I guess,
That's true. And
Yeah.
like in my neighborhood, a lot of times they're getting variances to make these houses bigger, so you could be fully renovated. They're
They're gonna,
still
yeah,
gutting it,
take it,
and
tear it down.
yeah,
Yeah, especially in Brooklyn, right?
yeah,
Or Roslyn,
yeah,
right? It's just
yeah,
in some of these areas, they just wanna get every square foot that they can potentially get, right?
yeah,
And for what it
exactly,
costs them to do it.
exactly.
Yeah.
In my part of Brooklyn, that's what they're doing. They're even making the backyards a lot smaller to get these massive houses.
Yeah, whatever they can get,
Yeah,
So now you've had the conversation about the value, what they can do to prepare the house, right? Is there documents as a homeowner or owner of a, commercial property that they should have ready, in anticipation of a sale? Like, what do you tell them
sure.
to get ready with?
Definitely. So, speaking of people making their houses bigger, we could go with that, start off with that. If you know what the zoning is in your area, you could look it up with the building department and various different websites, Zola, and a lot of different things. You could see what is the maximum buildable square footage for something on a lot if it's a house. It might be that the house that it is not really worth anything. It could be a complete wreck, but they'll still pay top dollar because they know what they could build
Love
on that
that.
land.
Yeah.
Maybe even subdivide the land or build these mini condos or it depends on where it is. So that's one thing to know is what your zoning is. A lot of times, even if we stick with the houses, you'll see a house set up like a two-family or a three-family, and it's really not. So get the C of O and
Yeah.
see what it is, and
We just had a deal that was a house that the doctor converted it to a medical office, right, in
yeah,
Brooklyn,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and,
yeah. Oh,
he
yeah. Oh,
felt it was legal because he had done it for 30 years, right?
that's right. And then
Yeah, that was a
everybody that
tough one.
came there, right? Yeah, they were like, "Oh, is it a house or is it a medical office?" And
Yeah,
then that one took a
so that's
while
a
to
good point.
sell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely a good point. And then there's, of course, this new dreaded property condition disclosure
Oh,
that
the
you guys
new
are
one.
dealing with,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah. So you know that we used to be able to, if you're selling a house, you used to be able to give a $500 credit or go through the whole disclosure of what's going on with the house. Now they got rid of that, and you have to fill out the form, and they even added questions to it, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a big liability for sellers.
Mhm.
And that's the kind of thing that I think it's great that the realtors talk about it at the beginning and get it filled out, not after the house is sold and then they say, "Oh, your attorney will fill it out with you when, when they're sending out the contract." Because some of those questions you should, be thinking them through and try to maybe getting the supporting documentation and those types of things because that form follows you after the closing, and you don't wanna rush to fill it out, and even though it's being filled out to the best of your knowledge, you know what is the best of your knowledge? And you wanna just put your best foot forward with filling it out carefully, getting supporting documentation, like maybe getting a copy of the COs you have from the house or any other repair bills that you have so that you don't wind up with a headache later. That's a good point, what you need to do.
Yeah, that's scary. And
Yeah.
I guess from a lawyer perspective, it's
Yeah.
really important,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because you could get sued if you fill out the wrong way
Sure,
or
yeah,
try to hide
and
something, right?
it's new, there's no cases yet, it's only since March 20th, so,
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to be the example, right?
yeah, and I guess the other thing too is, if you're in a condo or co-op, you wanna get all your docs together, right?
That's
Because
true. Yeah, so that you want to get the bylaws, the offering plan, the house rules, and this will give you a lot of different things that you could take that you have to give to the potential buyer. So it'll also let you know if you could rent out your property, if you could do open houses. It'll give you fees if there's a flip tax when you sell, if there are application fees. There's a lot of things that are in those documents that are very important when
yeah,
you're selling.
having that's great because what happens is we get the term sheet to send out the contract, which is, easy to send out, but you're immediately going to get an email from the buyer's attorney saying, "Do you have the last 2 years' financials? Do you have the audited financial statement? Do you have the offering plan?" All the due diligence documents that they're going to want. And at least half of the time, that nobody's thought about that. So now we're trying to chase all that stuff down. And if you're a homeowner and you want to get the property, or sorry, condo or co-op owner, and you want to get the property into contract quickly, having that all in advance is amazing stuff.
Yeah.
That's
And
really important.
yeah, time kills deals also. So if you're chasing down those documents because you didn't have that ready, and then all of a sudden one of the neighbors comes on the market
A lower price,
at a
better
lower
place,
price or
better deal.
something, all of
Yeah.
a sudden you're
Yep, you
you're
want
out of luck.
yeah, so those are all great things. If you're selling a piece of property, you have a copy of the CO, that's amazing. If you're required to fill out the property condition disclosure statement, getting that done in advance is so helpful. Having all your condo co-op documents, those are all great things. Trust me, your attorney will love you for it if you
Yeah.
if you do that
Yeah.
stuff
Also
in
knowing if there's
advance.
any violations too, right, on the
Yeah,
property or
yeah,
easements. I
yeah.
remember I believe it was that same actual deal that was the
Okay.
crazy one with the house or medical office. People wanted to build on it because it had a lot of buildable square footage around the area. They were knocking down the houses and building these condos, and it turned out I asked you for initial title fee, the title search,
Search,
thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, yeah,
And we found out there were 3 easements that I had to disclose to people. I
yeah.
mean, if you found out about it after the fact, then
Not gonna work, yeah.
it could have crushed a lot of deals.
Yeah, so, in at least in New York, the houses are pretty much 500 to in the millions, right?
Yeah,
So just doing that little bit of extra work ensures that your deal is gonna get into contract quickly or avoid it falling out of contract, for representing something that you really can't represent. So those are all great things to do. As far as, like the marketing of the property, like what are you doing? Like what are the things you're doing? If I give you my house to list, like where are we going from there with it?
so we do a lot of things. We first of all, we get the professional photographer in there. I know that everyone has these special phones and they have amazing cameras, some of them, but nothing beats a professional photographer. Night and day. They know the angles, they know the lighting. There's a lot that goes into it that we don't think of from perspective of an artsy person, right?
Right. They say with great listing photos sell properties, right?
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely, and then we do video too, so we'll do a video of the property, sometimes a video of the neighborhood as well, if there's a park nearby or something like that, or commercial space.
The
What
virtual staging.
the virtual
That's a great
staging we do
idea.
on
Yeah.
empty apartments always.
Mhm.
Also, we sometimes do the virtual walkthrough, but the property has to be really immaculate for that one because I've had it where you see, like, a little thing popping out under the sofa and, you're looking at it. It's amazing how much it picks up, everything. If you have, like, a little chip of paint, you'll see it on
Right.
this virtual thing, so you have to decide, do you really wanna get that detail?
Something that
With houses,
you do
if
open houses?
we do open houses as well. So we figure out what's good for the seller, if it's an occupied apartment. Are you okay with weekend open houses? If it's the summer, sometimes we like to do a weekday or warm weather where it's still light at night. We'll do a weekday evening open house. Um,
I imagine in condos and co-ops, there's a lot of restrictions on timing, right?
that is true. So
Yeah.
that goes back to getting the house rules and the bylaws as well, because sometimes you can't even do an open house on a property of a co-op or you can't show past a certain time. So it's very important to know what's going on with those things as well. And then sometimes if going back to the professionals, we'll get a drone up in the air if the area allows it. They're starting to do some restrictions in New York City, so
Uh-huh.
I actually had an interesting situation once where I was with a professional photographer, and this undercover van pulls up, and cops come out, and they're like, "What are you doing?" We're like, "Oh, we're photographing this
I guess
property."
terrorists and all kinds of other things, you know,
Exactly.
they gotta
So
nowadays you gotta be careful.
right, so in this
And in
day and
Manhattan.
age yeah, so this day and age, they're watching, you don't even realize.
Wow.
And they didn't let us do the drone on that property, so,
That was in New York City.
that was in New York City. So,
Wow.
in Long Island, I believe you're still allowed to, but also you can't be a certain distance from the airport. I mean, there's a lot of rules. You have
Yeah.
to have a license to do the drone.
Wow.
I've had it in Manhattan where the drone actually flew up for 2 seconds and fell right back down. We watched it because they weren't authorized to do it, so,
Oh,
yeah.
that's
So,
interesting.
yeah, so, if you don't see drone on certain things, it doesn't mean that the agent's not doing their job. It might be
Can't do
that
it,
you can't
restricted.
do it, yeah.
Oh, so that's all, informative and real interesting stuff there, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to come and sit with me and do this little, video. It's always good to see you. And, so just, if anybody wanted to reach out to you and, maybe discuss, it further, how could they get in touch with you?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. And if you have any questions or if you want to reach out to me, I'm Andrew Markowitz of Andrew J. Markowitz Real Estate LLC. You can follow me on Instagram at DrewMarkNYC. Email me at info@andrewmarkowitzrealestate.com. And I'm sure we're going to have all my contact information
Absolutely.
at the bottom of the video as well, right?
Sure.
Thanks. Really, this was fantastic.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, I'm Bill Mason from Mason& and Mason. This is real estate from an attorney's perspective. I appreciate you watching us today. And if you enjoyed the content, please subscribe, like, and share. And if the topic is something that you want to discuss further, either one of us would be happy to speak to you. Just reach out to us. Thanks again. Appreciate you watching.